Welcome back to the channel, folks, and to our second game using the new American Bulge starter set, the Spearhead box. Now the first game I used these Yanks in a defensive mission. It was contact, so I think it was contact, so I had to take an objective as well as defend. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. As it turned out, with a bit more time available to us, they would have won. So that's interesting to see and a good start for the Yanks. This game, they're going to be an all-out attacking force against a defensive force. You know, it's a list that's been set up with defence in mind. And Tom's going to be playing them. That's going to be a German Grenadier force. So let's go over to Tom, have a look at his list, and then refresh what we've got in the US Spearhead force and take it from there. Right, Tom, welcome back to the channel. You're going to take on the Spearhead box again today as a defender. Obviously you'll be playing Germans, so what's in your list?
So it's a very standard D-Day Panzer Grenadier, so a unit in half tracks, a unit dismounted, a couple of mortars, some Pack 40s, and then some 88s. Oh, we've got some flamethrowers, some Stummels, a unit of 4 SS Panthers, which I guess are the highlight of the list, the big cavalry reserve, and then some Vesp artillery support and some recce.
And what cards have you got?
Right, so to get most of that in, I have to downgrade my Panzer Grenadiers to 9th Panzer. So all my core units are only Tactics 4+, but for that you get a point discount. And then I never leave home without it. Panzer Pioneer. I always like to have one unit that can dig in on a 2+ and that can clear minefields. So that gives me the flexibility that if I want to attack and I need minefields to clear, then I can do that. And then my armoured Panzer Grenadiers and my Panthers can follow. So it's a good all-round list.
And a lucky ducker card as well.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Oh yes, I'm a lucky card. Yeah.
Right. I'll go over now and have a look at your list and have a look at the Spearhead list. Though, if you're familiar with the Spearhead box set, folks, that's what it is. But we'll go and have a look now. So folks, here is Tom's list as described. This here is the core formation, so it's big and chunky. You've got 2 Panzer Grenadier platoons. One of them has got half tracks, one's got the Panzer Pioneer card. There's also a little 2 mortar section, and there's Fausts in the command teams. Then 3 Pack 40s, oh actually the 88s are support, 3 Pack 40s, 4 Stummels and 2 Flame half tracks. Then in support the 288s, the Wesps plus the Observer. These 8 rads are in as the 20mm version of the Puma. And then 4 Panthers for some well armoured, hard hitting anti-tank. So quite a big list, folks, and still careful, even with that card that's been used, the 9th Panzer. So a tough looking force for the Yanks to take on. Here is the Spearhead force that I'll be using. It's the same as in the last game, because we want to see how this does as an attacking force rather than as a defending force. So you may be familiar with it already, but I'll just go through it. Starting with the core formation, it's quite a sizable core formation in terms of the number of platoons. Got the HQ, which has an Easy 8 and a Jumbo, a 76mm Jumbo, then a platoon of 3 Easy 8s, and then 4 Chaffees, and then 2 Pershings and 3 Calliopes. And that's all core formation. Now, it's got a lot of platoons, but for instance, the main tank platoon there is it's only got 3 tanks in it. The heavies, only 2. So they could be very quickly reduced down to an ineffective level. I've got to be very careful. And then the largest platoon has only got a front hammer of 4. They're fast though, so they may have advantages in that respect. And then these guys, remember, they are artillery only. They don't have their guns, their main guns, and salvo template with just a firepower of 5. So it's not the strongest firepower, but they cover a large area. And then in support, there is the Bastogne Para platoon. And the options I've taken here are the 2 bazookas, but no light machine guns. You could add up to 2 light machine guns here, but it would knock off 2 points, and I wouldn't be able to get everything else you see in the force if I was to go down that route. I could take 1 less bazooka and 1 more light machine gun, but I prefer 2 bazookas. And then finally, there is the Recon Platoon with the 2 Greyhounds, mortar jeep and machine gun jeep. So there you go, folks. Let's see how these guys will do in attack. Let's take a minute to review all of the Spearhead units that we've yet to feature in these 2 videos. So we're starting with the M8 Greyhound Cavalry Recon Patrol. These guys are rated Careful, Confident, Veteran. They've got weaker counter-attack, last stand and assault rolls because of their scout nature. They're also observers. They've got the scout and the spearhead rule. They've got the Greyhounds themselves, which have 2 points of frontal armour and 1 on the side. They've got a 37mm gun that is overworked and a 50 cal. So they can put out a decent amount of MG fire as well as some anti-tank fire. And the jeeps are armed with either a 60mm mortar, which has got a 32-inch range, and a 50 cal. A Jeep MG with a 16-inch range and rate of fire 3. So they're a versatile little unit, and they're going to be one of the go-to units for your American scout options. Now the Bastogne Para platoon, they're kind of the pinnacle of the American infantry options. They're careful, fearless, veteran, and have a last stand of 2+, which means they're going to be quite hard to kill. They should motivate well, and they're going to run away only if you're unlucky, if you're whittled right down to 2 bases. They are armed with rifles, the Garand rifle and M1990 machine guns. So that's a rate of fire 2 on the move and 1 pinned, and you can give them a 60mm mortar and a bazooka with the option of adding in a further bazooka and 2 separate light machine gun teams. So the platoons can be quite big. They could be up to 12 bases in a platoon, and these guys, as I said, they're top class infantry, so they could be a very capable unit, particularly in defence. Now on to the Easy 8s. Now most Sherman options here come in the aggressive and the careful kind, so just refer to your books for the full stats. We're using the careful kind here, so these guys are careful, confident, trained with a 3+ remount and a 3+ tactics rule for the Yankee ingenuity. Now these guys have got a 10-inch tactical, 14 terrain dash, 18-inch cross-country dash and a 2+ cross check, so that's a good cross check. But they've also got the smooth ride rule, which means if they move no more than 4 inches in the movement step, they can fire with a full rate of fire and no penalty for stabilizers. So that's a little advantage that these guys have got compared to an average Sherman. Otherwise, they're bristling with weapons. They've got an anti-tank 12, 36-inch range main gun, but it's got no HE. And you've got to remember that if you're shooting guns. And then it's got 50 cals and MGs, so it can be shooting up soft targets quite as easily as it can be shooting up hard targets if it uses its MGs, but the main gun's going to struggle to hit infantry and gun teams. And let's finish on the jumbo. We can't miss out the jumbo, folks. As an American player, you're going to want to use it. Now the motivation is the same as the Easy 8. It's got the remount as well, the 3+ remount. But here's the difference: its front armour An Easy 8's got front armour 7, side 4, top 1. A Jumbo has got front 11, side 8, top 1, and it's designed to take anti-tank fire. Jumbos lead the way. It's a little bit slower when you get to the dash speed compared to an Easy 8. And it's got a 4+ cross check, which isn't so good because it's a big lumbering tank. It can be armed with a 75mm with an anti-tank 10 or a 76mm with an anti-tank 12. And that 76mm once again has got no HE. They've also got the 50 cals and the MGs. But these guys are there to take a hit. You can put up to 1 in each platoon and also in the company command. So if you had a platoon of 3 Shermans, you could have 3 Jumbos with the company command attaching onto one of those platoons when it's receiving incoming fire, maybe even getting 2 Jumbos in one platoon to soak up those hits. Going to be a very popular unit, for a popular tank even, for you Yankee players. For stances, when rolling for the mission, Tom chose defence, I've chosen attack. The armies are kind of set up for that. And the mission we rolled is Fighting Withdrawal, which has got a very simple little layout, nice easy deployment zone. It doesn't really say it here, but the halfway line and back is going to be the defender's deployment zone. And the attacker's got a very small deployment zone, 8 inches in from the back, and quite a large objective deployment zone, as you'll see there. Now, I should point out, as we go on to look at the mission and victory conditions and so on, that I'm recording this after we played the mission. Had I done it before, as you'll see, I may have played the mission a wee bit differently as the attacker. So, special rules, we've got ambush, minefields, and strategic withdrawal. Now, ambush and minefields you'll be pretty familiar with. Let's go to strategic withdrawal. Let me see. So, there we go, folks. The critical thing here is that if the defender from turn 2 onwards has 6 or more platoons, they have to withdraw one of them at the start of turn 2 onwards. If they don't have 6 platoons, then they gain a turn counter that counts as a platoon in terms of the count. So imagine they had 5 platoons at the start of turn 4. They're not going to remove a platoon, but when it comes to turn 5, they add a delay counter and oh, for fuck's sake, man, you're fucking this up so much. Right, folks, the mission in some detail. Now, Tom chose defence and I chose attack, and we rolled Fighting Withdrawal. It's quite a simple deployment setup, as you can see. Things of note is the size of the defender's deployment area, right up to the halfway line, and the size of the objective deployment area. You know, it's quite big. It's 16 inches in from the sides, but also 16 inches up from the back table edge. And the attacker's got a small deployment area, but you know, they're still quite close to, they're still within 16 inches of the edge of the defender's deployment zone. Special mission rules rather is ambush, minefields and strategic withdrawal. So ambush and minefields you'll be familiar with. Strategic withdrawal you may not, if you've not played this mission, and even if you have played this mission, it's worth double checking it. So have a read of the section. I'm not going to go into it because it's quite a bit of reading, but have a read of it, folks, just so that you understand when you're going to be taking off platoons and how to calculate the number of platoons you've got on the table and delay counters. Now, victory conditions. The attacker wins if they end one of their turns holding an objective. The defender wins when at the start of turn 8 they're basically on an objective. You know, the wins at the start of turn 8 after checking force morale. So basically, if they're holding an objective at the start of turn 8, then they have won the game. As you'll see from how I played the game, I hadn't actually recorded this before the game began. Otherwise, I would have taken a bit of a different approach. But in the end, the game, as you'll see, all comes down to the normal kind of trials and tribulations of the game. But lesson here for me and for anyone else who plays the game: read and understand the victory conditions, because not every mission is the same. So let's go over now and have a look at the forces deployed on the table. Right folks, we have deployed. The mission is fighting withdrawal, not one we've done very often, and Tom has decided to defend this half of the table here. You can see the deployment zone markers and then the objective deployment zone. Now I put an objective marker here and here, and then my deployment zone, as you can see, is just along the back edge, they're 8 inches in. Tom has closed off this flank with minefields. He's got a Grenadier platoon in here with their half tracks, and then Observer, his Stummels, his flamethrower half tracks, all keeping their heads down. Company command in a good position to view from the steeple. The Wesps are back here, far enough away from the edges of these tree lines so they can't be seen. Panthers taking cover behind the hedge. Little mortar section here, armoured cars, the 2nd Panzer Grenadier platoon, the 88s, and then 3 Pack 40s in ambush. And then my not very sizable force. Right, so we've got paras and Chaffees with, excuse this, I'll zoom out folks, that's too shaky. Paras with Chaffees and Recon Platoon, with the Recon mortar and the para mortar sitting beside the Calliopes on the hill, and then platoon of 3 Easy 8s, Company HQ, and 2 Persians. And that's it folks, we are ready to start, so I'll clean up all these markers and come back at the end of Yankee turn 1. American turn 1. Right, let's see folks. There was a bit of dashing going on there with the Recon, the para infantry and the Chaffees. These guys stayed put. We've actually forgot to do these single mortars, I'll come back into them. And then smooth ride forward with the Easy 8s, and then the Persians and Company Command Jumbo stayed put, and then fired down here. Now, needed 6s to hit these guys. They're aggressive, but long range and concealed, and only got 1 hit. Unfortunately, it was just a 76, and it was easily saved. So, the other shooting, the Calliopes rearranged in over here on the 3rd attempt. They managed to hit 1 gun, 1 infantryman, so they're pinned, but no casualties. So, not the most devastating start to the game, and I reckon I may be meeting quite a few Pack 40s, along with some Panthers, very soon. Right, Tom's turn 1. So in terms of motivation, the infantry didn't unpin, the 88s did. Oops. Just get rid of that. And then Tom's popped his ambush. He wants those Pack 40s down in his position, because that's a fairly clear and obvious attack. So he's putting them there. And that gave him a chance to shoot at Chaffees and at Calliopes. Then he's moving, that's the infantry from these houses, the Stummels, Flame half-tracks, all moving up now because there's nothing pointed towards that objective. The Wefts also made a wee bit of a move up as well, and Panthers stayed put, they had lots of things to shoot at, while Namakars moved into the field. So in terms of shooting, started with a smoke bombardment down there to cut off any return fire from the Persians, and also prevent my company command attaching on with his jumbo, and because in terms of shooting he only got one hit, but that was enough, and he passed his firepower, so it was a dead easy 8. And the Pack 40 also killed one of the Pee-wee Calliops sitting on the hill there. The other Pack 40 missed the Chaffee, but very much first blood to the Germans were an inconvenient smoke barrage to stop me shooting back. American turn 2. There was nothing for motivation there really. So in terms of movement, the Paras, I'll just zoom in there a bit folks, they have dug in behind the wood. The Recon have gone behind the wood. Chaffee's blitzing behind the hill, and everyone else is moving off this way because all the anti-tank guns are over there, and it's an easier objective to get to, but it's a lot of anti-tank guns, and I don't have a lot of tanks. So I've moved everybody over here, kind of dashing along. And in terms of shooting, it was just the artillery. The Calliops have lost one now, unfortunately. So they managed to force one 88 onto a firepower check, but failed because they need a 5. It's not the best. Why the Paras dug in, if I didn't mention that. Then the wee mortars between them managed to kill another base of infantry. And that's it for shooting for me, guys. I'm just kind of repositioning myself and not really knowing what to do. I don't have any smoke that I can advance behind, and my guys with front armour 7 are very vulnerable to anti-tank 14 and anti-tank 12, while some of my guys are only anti-tank 4. So I'm just manoeuvring around just now. Tom's turn 2. In terms of motivation, everything unpinned. In terms of withdrawing units, he took the flamethrowers that were here, he took them away. He didn't see them getting into the game really because the infantry are way over there. Then in terms of movement, the mounted grenadiers have moved up to where those flamers were, the Stummels out of line of sight of these guys behind there. And that was it. In terms of shooting, the Wesps ranged in over here. Got some hits on the infantry and the Recon, but all saves were made. And then the mortars also ranged in over there and didn't do so well, so I don't know if there was even any need to roll any saves there. So otherwise, Tom's keeping his head down. He's keeping his Panthers in a position so they can move to take on a threat, and keeping them going to ground because they are aggressive and he doesn't want any surprises. So Yankee turn 3. Motivations, yeah, the fearless Paras didn't pass the rally, so they just stayed put. In terms of movement, the scouts have moved around here, everything on the hill stayed put, Chaffee's shot around here, and then with some actual successful blitzing, got the company command and Persians in position to shoot at the Stummels. The 2 surviving Easy 8s are behind the wood at the moment. Here I managed to get 2 hits from the Shermans, but 2 failed firepowers, and then 1 hit from the Persians, which was mistaken targeted onto a bailed one. So you can see 1 dead, 1 bailed. Not great, but as I don't have a plan at the moment, I'll take it. Tom's turn 3, the infantry unpinned. I think that was only check needed. The Stummels were kind of sticking their neck out a bit, so Tom decided he would withdraw them and keep his artillery, and even the mortars, with just 2 mortars, he is at least ranged in over there. In terms of movement, this infantry dismounted and went into the church. The Panthers are edging around. Did not want to come out for a toe-to-toe yet. And that was it. In terms of shooting, the Wesps managed to kill 1 base of infantry for their repeat bombardment. The mortars managed to get a hit, but no kills. And that was it for shooting. The Wesps then shooted and scooted back to here. So, over for me to try and make some headway in turn 4. So, Yankee turn 4, the infantry unpinned, the Paras. I've left the marker on, but they have unpinned. They're just sitting there. The Recon are just sitting there. Over here, I managed to tactically move up company command and the Pershings. Everything else has dashed in. And they did a bit of shooting with 50 caliber machine guns and got a couple of hits, but no casualties in here. The artillery meanwhile continued over here. The 88s both got hits, but they both made their rerolled saves. One infantry got hit and made its reroll save as well. And that was it, folks. But I'm just advancing where I can and holding on, or holding back rather, where I have to. Tom's turn 4. Motivations, the 88s didn't unpin, and the infantry did. In terms of withdrawing, he took the mortars that were here. Then, in terms of movement, withdrew the half tracks because they were just getting in the way, and he's cross-country dashed his tanks over to here, his Panthers. In terms of shooting, I left myself exposed to some nasty fire here. I think it's probably lucky those 88s didn't unpin, because they were in range of side armour of my jumbo. 2 shots and a miss. The Pack 40 managed to get another hit and a kill, so the Calliops will be testing. But to be honest, they've done nothing all game. They've literally not done anything at all game. Let me see, the Wesps rearranged in using the company command, because the Wesps last turn had pulled back, and in that front corner of the wood got ranged in. 1 hit but no kill, but they're ranged in there now. So it's over to me for my turn 5. So yeah, turn 5. In terms of motivation, the Paras unpinned and the lone Calliope on the hill there stayed. In terms of movement, Paras moved up. The scouts did a bit of blitzing, bit of moving to get into position to shoot, and then a wee bit of blitzing, a bit of a smooth ride or whatever so on, and tacticals from the Calliops to do some shooting too. Then I really needed to get some pins here, and my mortars and Calliops have hit every turn. This turn they didn't want to hit. So the infantry were unpinned. The 88s were still pinned anyway, so that wasn't so bad. And then in terms of other shooting, the Greyhound managed to kill and bail the Puma type things, 231s maybe. These guys here behind the church on us needing a 8 managed to hit an 88, but it passed its safe. And then the 76s from the HQ and the Persians got between them 2 hits on these guys, both potential bails, and I failed the firepower, so not done a thing. I've got all this anti-tank going, oh hello, next turn. These guys just tried to finish off the armoured cars, but never got any hits. So that was it for me. Oh, the assault folks, sorry. I tried to assault just the end of these bases infantry. I lost 1 on the way in and got another 4 hits, just enough to pin me and push me back. Or I might have done something, I might have got in and got in about these anti-tank guns, which was my hope. But even just a little bit of forward movement was my hope. So over to Tom for his turn 5. Okay, Tom's turn 6. In terms of motivation, the armoured car passed and stayed, go back in and stayed, and then he withdrew it. The 88s didn't unpin, and that was the only other motivation. In terms of movement, he's protecting the objective against the Paras by moving his Panthers around there. These guys blitzed forward, the Wesps. Everything else stayed put and did some shooting. The significant shooting that came from these guys because of the blitz. 3 shots on foes, they got 4 hits. Nothing meaningful in the way of armour over there. 3 hits, sorry, and there was 3 dead. 3 dead Shaffies, unfortunately. And then over here, the 88s didn't do anything. The Pack 40s fired at infantry, didn't do anything. 1 Pack 40 fired at Shermans and missed. The Panthers had blitzed and followed me. They weren't, they had dashed and followed me, so they weren't shooting. The infantry all fired into here, got a bucket load of hits, something like 8 out of 15 hits on 5s, and I failed 2 saves, so it could have gone worse for me, but 2 is probably an average, I would say, if you're sitting in that kind of situation for casualties. So, the most important thing this turn is the Chaffee's got splattered. Yeah, turn 6. The Calliope ran away. The Chaffee stayed. The infantry unpinned. Then in terms of movement, my infantry swung around out of that wood over towards this field. The Greyhounds moved up to help them out. And then I've just tried to keep moving these guys over. But I've got to go that way. That's where that's the only way I can take an objective. Oops, those guys are actually all gunners. Then in terms of shooting, I don't seem to have a lot of luck getting things pinned. I ended up having to use Persian machine guns to get the infantry that was here pinned. But I did it in the end, and that was probably enough to help out in the assault. The other shooting, there wasn't a lot to it at all, to be honest. Tried to shoot the tanks that could, the 76mm tried to shoot the 88s, but they need a hell of a lot at that range to get hits. Over here, he managed to get one of the wefts, so there's a bit of payback before he probably bites the dust. And then in the assault, I lost one base on the way in, killed 2, and Tom's decided to stay in the game, break off. He could only get one base in a counter-attack, and keep contesting that objective, because these guys are hanging out in the open asking for a clobbering. But there you go, at least I'm getting stuck in, guys. We'll see if it'll come to anything. Turn 6. So in terms of motivation, these infantry unpinned instead, and he dubbed them in. The 88s didn't unpin again, and he removed his wesps. They maybe could have killed him next turn, but there's just too much other useful, important things that need to hold objectives left on the table. And then in terms of shooting, the 88s with 2 shots missed. The Pack 40s with 4 shots managed to get a hit, but it ended up on a jumbo, and at that range it couldn't hurt it. And then between the Panthers and the infantry, these guys took 5 hits. The Paras, took 5 hits, but they made all the saves. They're pinned, but they're still alive. So we're both getting very, very thin on the ground, and time is running out for me as the attacker. So we'll see what I can do, if anything, next turn. US turn 7. In terms of motivation, the Chaffee stayed, and the fearless infantry did not rally. They didn't unpin. In terms of movement, I just keep on moving everybody over. Moving the scouts up as well. The Chaffee moved up to pick his nose around the corner. In terms of shooting, not the most effective shooting, folks. It was the mortars, individual mortars were ranging in, but not getting any kills this time, but at least they both ranged in. Here, I forgot to put the marker down. Then shooting at the Panthers, my shooting wasn't too hot. Killed one, bailed one from these guys. That's a total of 10 shots, needing like 4s and 5s, 3 in one case. And I tried to clobber these anti-tank guns, but never managed it. So that's about it. I'm not going to assault. There's no point in assaulting with these, because they would be at a quick glance 4, because of elevation, 4 shots going back at them in defensive fire, and these guys are not pinned. If they weren't pinned, I would have given it a go. So that's it for me. Time is almost up. Let's see what Tom can do to try and finish me off next turn. Tom's turn 7. In terms of motivation, the infantry didn't unpin but stayed. 88's finally unpinned. In terms of movement, these infantry are trying to go up, see if there's any rich pickings at the back end of this lot of Shermans for assaulting. And then shooting, shooting was a wee bit unproductive, but productive in one important way. The 88's got loads of hits on the Persians, and I attached Company HQ with the jumbo. Unfortunately, it made one save but then failed the other. You know, one or anything above a 2, but I got a 2 because it's a short range. So Company HQ Jumbos did, and then all the other firing, like the Packs went for the Persians, and then the Panthers, and it just ended up with one bailed Persian. So that was lucky to be alive, so to speak. Now, that was about it really for shooting. A couple of important hits. If he doesn't get back in, it could be well dodgy. And if my infantry don't pin next turn, it's going to be even more dodgy. And then a wee shooting scoot to get these guys up to help contest the objective to secure it for the last turn, which is coming up next. Yank turn 8. The wee Chaffee ran away, the infantry unpinned. So I did a bit of movement. The scouts went around the flank. The infantry moved up. There was an anti-tank gun there. The company command moved up as well. Everything else stayed put to do some shooting. In terms of shooting, there was quite a lot of shots at the infantry and at the anti-tank guns, but no fail-safes. And then shooting at these guys, there was a degree of good shooting, but good saving. But there were so many shots going in, they've ended up with 2 bailed, 2 dead. And then the assault came in. These guys got in the side of a Pack 40, which was blocking line of sight from the 88 that was beside it. And the Pack 40 here, it wasn't in the arc of fire, so I managed to get in with no counter fire and killed it. There was nothing that could then move to contact, so he had to break off. I captured his Pack, his 88s, the Pack 40 down here, pushed these guys out, but only along a bit. I should have been bolder and moved these right up, so he would have been pushed away, or I could have assaulted them again. But I kept him put to kill them because I was worried about counter-fire and assaults. So anyway, these guys were left with nobody to assault after the break-off. So, over to turn 8, where we'll figure out what the victory conditions are and what needs to be done. Tom's turn and the final turn. So this really comes down to whether or not these units here stay on the table. You can see in motivation that Panther didn't get back in. That one did, so that one's not contesting. The infantry, if they run away, then there is nobody contesting, and that'll be the end. That'll be the end of the game. These guys might be able to do something, but this is a critical bit, because if they do stay, it's definitely the end of the game. And they passed. So they've stayed, keeping them within contesting distance of the objective, which gives the hard-fought win and a really entertaining game, I hope, to Tom. Right, so there you go, Tom. A well-controlled victory for you today. How did you think it went?
Controlled. It looked fairly panicky at the end. The list did quite well. So I tried to make the town as unattractive to your paratroopers as possible by just having loads of minefields and loads of machine guns, with the idea being that if you went for the other flank, like I wanted you to, I could shift that defence rightwards, and then hopefully my Panthers in the middle could react to wherever your armour could go, and then all the anti-tank guns on the hill, the 88s on the hill with the Packs could hopefully fend off any armoured drive, and it went more or less to plan. Ended up having to play a bit more cat and mouse with the Panthers than they otherwise would like to. They often got a bit bullied by Pershings and things, and your paratroopers, whilst they stalled at the beginning of the game, once they started getting going and you killed a few bases with your mortars against my Panzer Grenadiers, things were looking very sketchy on the right hand side. But luckily the list has got lots of small units, so I can withdraw little units that are irrelevant without much impact on the overall force. I guess overall, trying to deal with the new US armour is a bit trickier because your Pack 40s are less reliable. The fact that the veteran means that your big guns like 88s that you usually only got 2, maybe 4 shots with, are less reliable at hitting and consequently killing stuff. The US force is quite potent.
Yes, especially if the
What's
88s don't unpin for most of the game.
Yeah. If your 88s don't unpin and then decide not to hit, yeah. But even on a tank-on-tank duel, like my Panthers found themselves outgunned, and even though a lot of your median armor was on the AT-12, once you get into that short-range firefight backed up with some Pershings, they can really take the toll. And my Panthers often came out on the losing end of a firefight.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I set my final assault up wrong. There was one thing I did wrong in it that would have given me a potential chance of winning the game, but I'm going to show that in a wee clip for everybody to see. Otherwise, I needed to thin down your anti-tank guns to make progress, I felt, and I didn't kill a single one with artillery or in shooting, and then I killed 5 in one assault, but it was too late. And that seems to be the how to put it. That seems to be my games these days. You should call me one turn Frank, because I'm always one turn away from being in the right place. Partly because I'm always playing new armies these days, and I do like to do that. I'm always using unfamiliar forces, and I'll go through, folks, my thoughts on the Yanks and the Spearhead box at the end again. But that was a good game. I really enjoyed it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mixed up my victory conditions, thinking about turn 6 being critical, but it means nothing in this game, and headed off to try and get to an objective for turn 6. If I'd have stayed more focused on the other side, you would have had Chaffees to deal with from behind the wood, and then I would have probably still had to come in through the town though. Otherwise, just face Panthers 88s and Pack 40s. But in the end, it was close, but no cigar. And it was a controlled win for the Germans, because you didn't do anything, you didn't commit to anything other than holding the objectives, which when you're the defender is what it's actually all about, folks. If you're watching these kind of games, it's not about shooting up enemy tanks. If those enemy tanks are somewhere that they can't take your objective, then you're winning the game. So a good lesson for everybody. But there you go, Tom. Thanks for playing.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully there'll not be any lockdowns or so on towards the end of January in Scotland, and we'll get our monthly meet up with the gang, and
look forward to it.
Get another couple of face-to-face games in. I might even get one myself this time, you never know.
Oh, be careful.
We'll see. We need an even number. Right. But there you go, folks. I'm going to go over now to a quick recap from myself, which is going to just talk about that final assault and just phases of assault, and then I'll talk about the Spearhead list. Cheers, Tom. So my summing up, folks, I managed to play another game with just half a brain, and the critical turn with just half a plan. I don't know what I was doing. I thought I had to be within 8 inches off an objective by the start of turn 6. That's not the case in this mission. The critical turn is the final turn, turn 8. That's why I headed off over here. If I'd actually read the mission pack, sorry folks, I would have kept concentrated over here, especially with my Chaffees in a position to come down once things were softened up. In terms of the rest of the game, well, you know what? I didn't destroy a single anti-tank gun with artillery or shooting. The luck wasn't quite with me in that respect, but these guys with the 76 mils are always going to struggle to shoot anti-tank guns. You've got to remember that. As far as the Panthers go, well, it was hard to say. They kept themselves out of the way, and then when they did stick themselves up, they did take a bit of a pasting. Even anti-tank 12 on the 76s can still kill a Panther, and that's my experience in the past of using Panthers against Americans. They'll get killed left, right and centre by anti-tank 12. And then this final turn, folks, this is a very useful final turn to talk about. You see, there was a Pack 40 here and then the gun line there. The infantry were here. Now, I set myself up to launch multiple attacks, which meant attacking in stages. I had to clear these anti-tank guns. That was going to be my first phase, second phase, and I had them as a third phase to attack the anti-tank guns. That was just stupid because I needed to kill the anti-tank guns, drive them off. I knew then the pins would start to fall, things would start to get captured, and these guys would have to get driven off. I needed to have my infantry here instead of here, so that when those guys were pushed back out with 6 inches of them, my infantry were then in a position to launch an assault. I mean, if any of these had been fully active, it would have been pretty hard to do. As it was, there would have been almost no counterfire. 2, 4, 5 dice of counterfire against 4 bases. I probably could have got in, killed them, or at least stood a chance of forcing them to break off and winning the game. So when you have a messy situation, especially around an objective, folks, think of your assaulting in phases and the empty space that you may need to launch your assault into in the subsequent phases of the assault if things are going your way. So what is my thoughts on the starter set? Well, you know, you can't go wrong with any of these starter sets if you, like me, don't have anything at all for the nation in particular. I've never played Yanks before. I do have some odds and ends in my collection that will allow me to add to the starter box and very quickly, with very little in the way of further purchases, play some really different lists, and that's what these are great for. And they're also lists that can stand alone to one degree or another in games. And I was quite surprised that these guys actually managed to do so well. As I said, I've never played Yanks before, so I don't know how to play them, and somebody who does know how to play them and who perhaps didn't make daft mistakes would probably be able to do something quite good with them. My only concern is there's so few tanks, they can all die pretty quick with one round of bad dice, but that's the same with any expensive tanks, I suppose. So my impression is great value for money, great way to start playing a nation, and the list itself is actually usable, you know, it's quite viable. Yeah, so hopefully if you're thinking about Yanks, this will give you a few ideas on using this box and how it works in itself and how the Yanks work. I will be changing up things like artillery. I don't like firepower 5 for the Calliops, folks, don't like it. I like my priests with firepower 3. So I'll be changing that up, adding in some armoured infantry, and then I've got an infantry list in mind already. And for the tanks, I don't know yet. Is it going to be 3 Persians or is it going to be 4 88s? They might work out at roughly the same kind of points. Yeah, I'll have to give some thought to that. So there you go. That's us, folks. Thanks for watching. Thanks very much if you're a subscriber, and if you'd like to do so, please subscribe and help us build the channel. And you know, and if you do keep watching, I can maybe make enough money from the adverts to afford a Christmas haircut.